Similar in format, similar kinds of questions to the homework questions and the quiz questions. I am gonna print out and hand out test papers for you to write on, so you won't have to read the questions from the screen. But otherwise, it should be very kind of familiar format at least, and you should expect it to be something like doing 4 of the quizzes altogether in terms of how long it is. It takes the whole class period, and you will send it in to Gradescope when you're done, just like on the quizzes. Anybody have questions about like the format or anything like that? I hope you have some good idea of what the questions will be like. All right, I guess we can just start talking about whatever you want to talk about. You know, I didn't have any sort of big bunch of stuff prepared to say, but take a look. And I would be happy to do examples of anything, or if there are like homework or quiz questions that you feel like you never got really well, we could talk about that, whatever you like. What do you say?
Can you go over monotonicity?
Sure, monotonicity. Monotonicity is part of like there were kind of 3 different types. If you look at number 4 on the paper here, which is not really a specific question, but there are 3 different kinds of criteria that are based on changing the votes around in certain specific ways. And yeah, maybe we'll just talk about all 3 of them. Does that sound right? Yeah. Monotonicity is, I think, the simplest one to understand. So monotonicity. Monotonicity is about when we boost the winner, they still win. And boosting the winner is, what that means is we change the votes in a way that raises up the original winner even higher on some of the rankings. So for instance, boosting the winner would look something like if somebody voted A, B, C, D in this order, and it turned out that C was the winner. Just because, let's just say this is like one of the votes among many others, and C, imagine that one person voted A, B, C, D, but C ended up winning the election. Boosting the winner means changing it to something like this, A, C, B, D. I left everybody in the same order, but I just raised C up a little bit. You could raise them all the way to the top if you want, or just raise them, not all the way to the top, some other little bit. This is boosting the winner, because all I did was raise C up a little bit. And the monotonicity says that when you boost the winner, they should still win the election. And this is true of most of the systems we've talked about, but not always. If I ask you, for instance, explain to me why the plurality satisfies the monotonicity, you have to imagine that we're using the plurality and then say, what's going to happen if you move the winner up a little bit? Well, if you're using plurality, you're just going to give that person more votes, right? If you boost them all the way to the top, they're going to get more positions in the top, which will make them win even harder using the plurality. Or maybe even if you just boost them up but not all the way to the top, you're not changing anybody's votes, and so they're still going to win using the plurality. All right, that's the monotonicity. Something which would not be boosting the winner is if you move the winner down, that's not boosting. But also there are other kinds of changes you could make. For instance, if I change this where C was the original winner, if I change it to something like C, D, A, B, this is not boosting the winner. Even though the C went up there, this doesn't count as boosting the winner because I also changed around the others, right? The other ones were A, B, and D in that order. But after this, I moved the D up also. This does not count as simply boosting the winner because I also changed around the losers in some other way, which kind of confused the whole thing. So this is not boosting the winner since I also messed up the other ones. This is a technical point. Any questions about that? Boosting the winner means you raise the winner up in some of the rankings, and everybody else you leave in the same order. All right. That's the monotonicity. What are the two other ones, which are about changing the votes in some way, are the IIA and the manipulability. Maybe let's talk about the IIA. This is one which many people messed up on the homework, on the quiz or something. The IIA is also about changing the votes and seeing what the outcome is in the results of the election. This is about the winner should not change after an irrelevant vote change, where I'll put irrelevant in quotes there because this is like a technical term. What it means to be irrelevant in the sense of the IIA is that you don't move anybody relative to the winner. So what I mean by irrelevant is all candidates I want to say this differently. Nobody moves relative to the winner. Relative to the winner. They don't move relative to the winner. What I mean is if they used to be below the winner, they have to stay below the winner. And if they used to be above the winner, they have to stay above the winner. All right? They do not change their position relative to the winner. So an example of one of these irrelevant changes would be something like if I have, say, A, B, C, D, E, and C was the winner, I'm going to change this in some way, but everybody who was above the winner has to stay above the winner, and everybody who is below the winner has to stay below the winner. And so the C still has to end up there, but I could maybe put BA on top and maybe change them on the bottom too. This counts as an irrelevant change because everybody who used to be above the winner is still above the winner. And everybody who used to be below the winner is still below the winner. So this is an irrelevant change. All right. And the IIA says when you do that kind of a change, it should not change who wins the election. All right. But actually, our methods typically do not satisfy this. Usually, these kinds of changes actually can change who wins the election. For instance, if you were using the plurality, this might indeed change the winner just because we moved B from a second place into a first place. This will give B more points in the plurality total, and so maybe you might actually cause B to win by doing this. All right. An example of something which is not irrelevant would be something like if I had A, B, C, D, and B was the winner, and I changed it to C, B, A, D. This is not irrelevant because it doesn't satisfy that thing where I said everybody below the winner has to stay below the winner. This didn't do that, right? Because the C here used to be below the winner is now above the winner. That does not count as an irrelevant change. All right? It's not simply saying that the winner stays in the same location. It also has to be that the ones above stay above, the ones below stay below. That's what the IIA is about. Any thoughts about that? This is kind of confusing in my opinion. A little subtle. Yeah.
So as long as you don't change the people that are above the fixed place, it's pretty much irrelevant?
If everybody who used to be above stays above, and everyone who used to be below stays below, yeah. Is that what you said? Something like
Yep.
Yeah. Yep, that's right. And then the last type of vote changing criterion was the manipulability. So a manipulation is harder to describe in the same types of diagrams I've been writing, but a manipulation is making any change at all which causes a better result. This is the kind of thing where maybe some of your voters ranked the winner last. So this would be like if it was someone like A, B, C, D voted like that, and D ended up being the winner. These people got screwed in this case. I'm not saying it was unfair, but just the result of the election was their absolute worst alternative. A manipulation would mean they changed their vote, maybe in order to put B on top, because apparently A is not going to be the winner, but maybe if they put B on top, they'll get their second best pick. All right, that's what a change in a manipulation looks like. So it would look like something like this is what happens originally. This voter is upset because their last place ended up winning. So maybe they decide it would have been better to vote like, they could change it completely all the way around. Trying to make B win. Where B was not their top choice, but better than D being the winner, which was their bottom choice. All right. This is a manipulation. And the change that you make with the manipulation could be anything. You can rearrange things however you like. The only thing is it should lead to a better result. So you wouldn't want to put D up top because these people hate D. They wouldn't want D to win, but they can do anything to make a better result. I hope that answers the question. I said a lot more than you were asking for, I think. Any other questions about these three things? Changing the votes? What else can we discuss? Yeah?
Can we go over the Condorcet method just one more time?
Sure. Condorcet's method. So, in addition to knowing sort of what it is and how to do it, you should also know the important thing about Condorcet's method is that it doesn't always give you a winner, which is why we don't use it in the real world, even though it does satisfy pretty much all of our criteria for what makes a voting system good. The Condorcet method, I will just invent another example. You can try the one on the paper at your leisure. How about 2 people said A, B, C, D. 3 people said B, A, C, D. 1 said C, A, B, D. And I'm putting D at the bottom every time. I didn't mean to do that. How about just to make things interesting, these guys put D up top. D, C, A, B. All right. Let's find the winner using Condorcet's method, if there is a winner. This is the one in which you compare them all in all possible pairs, taking 2 at a time. So I could do A versus B. I'll write down all the possible pairings just before we do them. A versus C or A versus D, right? Those are all the pairs which involve A. Then I could do B versus C, B versus D, and finally C versus D. There's 6 possible pairs that I could do here among 4 people. And you just have to decide. If I ignore everyone but those 2, say A versus B, look at this chart, ignore everyone except A and B, and see who would win. When I count up A versus B here, I have 2 people put A up top here. These like B, these like A, and these like A. Maybe, can I just say, first of all, how many voters do we have here? 4, 8, right? Could I, I'm sorry to do this. I'm going to change the last one to a 3, just so that it's an odd number, so I don't get any ties. I don't want to deal with ties. This is now 9 voters, right? So 5 points are needed to win, right? That would be a majority. Anyway, when I count A versus B, it looks to me like these 2 people like A better, this 1 also, this 3 also. So that was 2 and 1 and 3. That's 6 people like A better. So A is the winner in A versus B, right? Just to explain how I did that. 6 have A above B versus only 3 have B above A. If you know what you're looking for, you can pretty much do this in your head, but that's the reasoning why A is the winner when you look at just A versus B. All right, and you got to just do this for each of them. A versus C, it looks like here A is above 2 times, here A is above 3 times. It's going to be at least 5 times there. So A wins that comparison because A is above C at least 5 times. A versus D, A is above here and here and here, but not the last one. A still wins that one because A is above D on, it looks like 6 different times. And D is above A only 3 times. And actually at this point you can stop because you can already see that A wins all of its own comparisons. All right, really what you do is you do all of these, maybe just for the sake of completeness, I'll do the other ones too. B versus C, I have B above and also B above here, so B wins that. B versus D, B is above here and here and here, so B wins that one also. And then C versus D, I have C is going to win that one. It was the first one every time. That's not really, that was coincidental. Anyway, A wins all their comparisons. So A is the winner. Exclamation. Yeah.
I just wanted to go over the first question on the paper, specifically like 1E, where it says, like the dictatorship part, where it says assuming the dictator's in the rightmost column.
Yeah, sure.
I was just wondering, like, what do you mean by the dictator's in the rightmost column?
Yeah, so the
Is the dictator?
it means that C is one of the voters who wrote CBA. Sorry, the dictator, I said C too many times. When I said assuming the dictator is in the rightmost column, what I mean is the dictator is one of those voters who said CBA. Because the dictator is one of the voters, and the way the dictatorship method works is just like whatever that guy says, that's the result. So assuming that the dictator said CBA, then who wins?
C.
C, yeah, it's just who the dictator said. Yes?
Can you do more examples of like veto power?
Sure. Yeah. Veto power. Maybe could I mention the homework assignment that that was due last time? A lot of people messed up the question about the Electoral College. The Electoral College, and specifically about are any of the states a dictator? Do any of the states have veto power? And are any of the states the dummies? Dictator means that that person is the only one whose vote matters. So in the context of the Electoral College, if you ask, is there a dictator in the Electoral College? Some people said yes, California, because they have the most, the heaviest weight. It doesn't make them a dictator. Like being a dictator would mean that that state is the only one which has any power to determine the president, and that's certainly not true. I mean, that's not how the system works, right? Our system, there is no one state which is the only one which makes the decision. And similarly with veto power, if somebody in the Electoral College had veto power, for instance, California, that means you must have California in order to win the election, right? Veto power means that voter's weight is necessary in order to make it to the quota. But that's not true of the Electoral College either. Some people said California because you need to win California in order to become the president. That's not true, right? Like Trump became the president, but he did not win California. If that were true, then that would upset a lot of people in our politics. That would not be acceptable. And similarly, there's no dummies in the Electoral College. That would mean a dummy would be one of the states which, in no circumstances, could ever contribute to the winner. And that also is not true. That would not be acceptable in our system. Anyway, maybe I'll just make something up and talk about veto power. How about, I don't know if this is going to be interesting, but I'm just making this up here. 31, 18, 12, 5, and 1. Is there anybody here who has veto power among these numbers? What you got to decide is, are there any of those numbers which are absolutely necessary in order to make it to the 50? And you should start by looking at the biggest one and ask yourself, is this one actually necessary in order to make it to 50? Any thoughts? I see some nodding heads. The answer is yes. The 31 here really is necessary in order to make it to 50. Now you could kind of, sometimes you can just look at it and sort of say by common sense, yeah, I need the 31. But actually you can say very specifically, without the 31, all of these add to how much? 18 and 12 is 30, and then 5 is 35 and 36, right? If all those other ones only add up to 36, that means you need the 31 in order to make it to 50, right? You cannot make it to 50 without the 31 in there. So these all add to 36, so the 31 is needed to get to 50. And that means 31 has the veto power. All right? Yes?
So is like one way to see if they have veto power is just like taking them out and then just adding everything else up?
Yeah, add up everybody else and see if all the others can make it to the quota.
Okay,
Yep.
and that's it?
Yeah, I mean, if you like to think of it in that way, that will answer the question every time. Yeah. You should also, so 31 does have veto power. You should also consider 18. Maybe 18 does also, because more than one voter can have veto power. When I consider 18, I would add together all the other ones other than 18. That would be 31 and 12 and 5 and 1. Does that make it to 50? I don't know. It's 43, 48, 49, almost. This also does not make it to 50, right? Did I add that up right? No, 49 I said. That means you also cannot make it to 50 without the 18. And so the 18 also has veto power. Not so with the 12. If you add everybody except for the 12, it will make it past 50. And so the 12 is not necessary. Because if you did 31 plus 18 plus 5 and 1, you'd get past 50. All right. I hope that's helpful. What else? We got 5 more minutes. Yeah.
You also just go over dummies now?
Yeah, sure. So dummies is actually harder in this example. You have to look at these and decide. This time you should be considering like the 1 at the end, just because they're the smallest. Is the 1 a dummy here? Some of the answers I saw in the homework were like, yeah, probably. It's only 1, right? That sounds pretty dumb to me. You got to actually think about it. Is it possible for that 1 right there to influence the results at all? Or is the 1 just completely irrelevant? I think in this case, I mean, there's a lot of numbers here, so it's not immediately obvious to me if there are any situations in which the 1 could be relevant. But I would wonder, is there any way for me to add together the other 4 numbers to make 49? Because if you could make 49 with the others, then the 1 becomes important, right? And actually, this is the only way that the 1 could be important, is if the others could add up to 49, and then the 1 would make the difference. Otherwise, that 1 is never going to make a difference at all. And I think in this case, it is not possible to add the others. Can I add the others to 49? Oh, actually you can, right? 31 plus 18 is 49. So this is what I said, it's not immediately obvious. You have to look carefully at these other numbers and see, can they possibly be added together to make, in this case, a 49? And they can actually. So I would say the 1 is not a dummy, and neither is anybody else here. Since the 1 matters if it's 31 plus 18 plus 1, right? This adds up to exactly 50. And then that 1 really is important, because if you took the 1 away, it wouldn't add up to 50. But if you put the 1 in there, it does add up to 50. So there is some situation in which the 1 matters, which means the 1 is not a dummy. All right. This can be difficult sometimes, especially if you have many, many voters. You have to somehow consider all possible ways they could add together and see if that 1 in the end can make a difference. Yes?
Would 5 be considered a dummy?
Is 5 a dummy? So I can immediately say no because it's always, if I already know 1 is not a dummy, 5 is more than 1, and so if anything, the 5 has more power than the 1. And so the 5, you can sort of say for abstract reasons, is automatically not a dummy because the 1 is not.
So if anything's greater than the lowest number that's not a dummy, then it's not a dummy as well.
That's right. Yeah, if you already have a non-dummy, all the ones bigger are also non-dummies. Yeah. Looks like everybody's leaving. We got a few more minutes on the clock. I'll stick around for a few more minutes if anybody has more questions. But otherwise, see you on Friday.